Okay, so Andrew and Evelyn are going to come in through there. No problem, Buster. Alright, the bus must be here. The bus must have arrived. Okay, cool potato. Find who? Who am I looking for? Oh my. Let's do this over.
Well, hello, everybody. Good to see you tonight. I'm Abraham Funches. I'm the pastor of this particular church, and right now you're actually in the Jubilee UMC Freedom Center. Welcome to the Hazel Dorothy Scott Hall.
Tweet out the stream, guys.
We're
Tweet out the
excited that you're here.
stream. Put
We're
it on
just
your
so happy
Facebook.
to see everybody, and we're glad to open up our doors to accommodate intellectual exchange. This space is being utilized for a sort of edutainment that I think most people find beneficial. And I was just asked to take a moment or two to talk about some demographics that are very important to those of us who reside on this side of town. I want to say hi to my partner back there. I see him back there. I just want to say hello to him. But you know, I had an opportunity to write an op-ed, and one of the things that we've come to appreciate is that you can basically measure the health of a community by virtue of how well the black and brown people are doing in that community. I firmly believe that. And one of the things that we realized because of a Wall Street 24/7 report is that here in the Waterloo City Falls Metroplex, although things have changed ever so slightly, we realize that unemployment for blacks is in the high double digits, while unemployment for whites hovers around 3 or 4%. In terms of those who own housing, well, whites 70% own their housing, whereas blacks, well, they own about 30% of their housing. 70% is rental units. Educational disparities, almost 50% of our black and brown youth are not at reading level proficiency by the third grade. And in our eyes, this constitutes a crisis. And so ultimately, what are we going to do to change that? And of course, it is with great anticipation and some anxiety that we listen to all of these candidates that come through to see if they have the panacea. We want to know exactly what they're going to do to make life better for all of us. And so with that, I just want to take a moment now to introduce someone who is a civil rights icon in her own right. She's been around for a while, although she looks like she's about 33. And I want to introduce Ms. Vicki Brown.
Reverend Funches, thank you so very, very much. And First Lady Veronica Funches, we really appreciate you always opening your doors and having us to be here. I want to say thank you, first of all, to all of the organizers and everybody that put this event together. And why don't you all give yourselves a big hand? So I'm going to introduce Mrs. Evelyn Yang. Evelyn met Andrew when they both attended Columbia University. She was a L'Oreal marketing manager, and she was looking for a new direction. And when she met Andrew, she said that he seemed so earnest and genuine, and she said she felt like he wore his heart on his sleeve. She said it was like he had no game at all. And he wasn't really trying to game anyway. And that's what she really loves about him. Well, they got married in 2011, and she gave up the corporate world, and she is now a stay-at-home mom, raising their two sons, 8 and 3, in New York City. And they still enjoy date night. Maybe not that many. But I tell you what, it's got to be very interesting to be a wife of a candidate. You have to give up so much. I mean, just imagine being on the road night and day. So, people, I tell you, it's without further ado, I would like you to please join me in welcoming Evelyn Yang.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And it's a pleasure to be here today. When Andrew first told me he was running for president, I assumed it was just a phase. But now that you can laugh. But now that I've been traveling the country with him, I'm glad to see that it was not just a phase. In fact, I believe in my heart that it was a calling. Andrew is running as a parent and as a patriot on values that are dear to us as a family and so urgently important for us as a country right now. Americans right now know that things aren't all right. Too many people are being left behind. Too many American families are struggling to make ends meet. Too many women are stuck in abusive situations. We have children who are hungry and homeless. We have people who are sick and can't afford care. In the United States of America, where we have so much wealth. This should not be acceptable to any one of us. Yet Andrew is the only candidate addressing poverty in a meaningful way. We have the ability to eradicate poverty, and I believe a moral obligation as a country to do so. Of course, $1,000 a month can't solve all our problems. We as a country have a lot of big systemic changes to work on. And if you look into any one of Andrew's 100 plus policy proposals, then you will know that he fully intends to work on these problems. But the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month, in our hands, is the first step in the right direction. It will help pave the road ahead so that millions of families and Americans can lift their heads up, look forward, and plan, save for a rainy day, and hope for a brighter future. That is why I so embrace this campaign and the work that my husband is doing, putting humanity first and creating a new path forward, so that Americans can finally see that they are not invisible, that their country cares about them, that their country is willing to invest in them, that their country is willing to step up and secure them and their families a better future. That is the future that Andrew Yang is fighting for, and I love him for it. So now please join me in welcoming the next President of the United States, my husband, Andrew Yang.
Let's give it up for my wife, Evelyn Yang. It is no exaggeration to say that this campaign would not exist if not for her. Because one, she let me run for president in the first place. And number two, I wouldn't be running if not for the experience we had as parents together with our two boys, Christopher and Damien. Christopher is autistic. And the struggles we went through as a family together led me to realize what it's like for parents around the country and how we have to do much, much more to help those with the least among us. I'm Andrew Yang. I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. Raise your hands if you're here because you saw some TV ad. Something like that. Let me try it.
Who watches TV?
No, the reason that makes me happy, sort of. I mean, we spent a lot of money on those ads. It's very exciting. So if you came here, let's try something else. How about something like podcast, YouTube, some sort of online interview?
H3.
H3, we're doing H3 again.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah. And then the rest of you didn't have your hands up. Is it friends, family, people?
Yep.
Okay.
Friends.
Look at that, his entire row pointed to him. Very influential man here.
Newspaper.
Newspaper?
Right.
I love it. We need to invest in local journalism. Newspapers are phenomenal. I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running because the problems that got Donald Trump elected are real. That they preceded Donald Trump, and they will be here after he's gone. I think the Democrats who are singling out Donald Trump as the cause of all of our problems missed the lesson of 2016. Leading up to 2016, this is actually a tougher conversation with Evelyn, actually, because when we met, I was a fairly normal guy, and we dated, and she jokes about how there's like a big bait and switch involved. I'm sure if she ever thought that I was running for president, she would sort of run the other direction immediately. And I had no intention of running for president. But my career took a sharp turn about 10 years ago. The financial crisis had just occurred, 2009. How was that here in East Waterloo, or this part of Iowa, 10 years ago? Some of you were still here.
It was bad.
It was bad, right?
Job security was not there.
Yeah, like people's homes started losing value, businesses started to struggle. And I saw this happen, and I thought I kind of knew why it had happened. I thought because some of the people I went to school with had actually gone to Wall Street and helped come up with the derivatives and the exotic financial instruments that had crashed the economy. And I thought, wow, what a train wreck. I can't believe that's what we have people doing. That's terrible. And I was so struck by it. I was also struck by the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street. Y'all remember voting for that? I mean, we laugh. None of us voted for that. And so these Wall Street bankers had crashed the economy. None of them took any responsibility. They were like, who could have known? what I thought is what most Americans thought is like, you could have known because it's your job to know. And you were getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to do your job. Would you like to return all that money? You know? People should have gone to jail instead of just being like, hey, you know, who could have known? And so 10 years ago, when this was unfolding, I was like, one, I can't believe that there's no leadership, no accountability, no responsibility for this train wreck. In my mind, the financial crisis led fairly straightforwardly to Donald Trump winning because people are still pissed off, very rightfully so. I'm pissed off. So when this unfolded in 2009 and I saw this happen, I said, well, I have to try and do something positive. So I'm an entrepreneur, and the positive thing I did is I quit my job and I started a nonprofit. How many of you work in nonprofits or volunteer for nonprofit? If you don't have your hand up, you should at least pretend. Raise your hand. Say you're a good person. So I started this nonprofit, and this is where really Evelyn's tolerance started to reach toward the superhuman. Because I was like, hey, I'm now going to quit my normal job. I'm going to start a nonprofit. It's going to try and create thousands of jobs around the country. No, it will not pay a salary. Actually, we're going to fund it. How does that sound? And I'm going to be on the road all the time. So this is where she can reasonably say to me, it's like, hey, there's a little bit of bait and switchery because you certainly didn't tell me you were going to like go into like save the country mode in 2011, which is what I did. So I started this organization in 2011, and I spent 7 years helping create thousands of jobs in Cleveland, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, other cities around the country. And I was staggered by the gulf between different parts of this country, where if you fly between St. Louis and San Francisco, it's like you cross dimensions and decades and ways of life, not just a few time zones. Or even if you drive from a suburb of Des Moines or in northern Iowa, like a manufacturing town that's lost its jobs, and you drive 45 minutes south, it's like things change so quickly in America between communities. So I was taking all this in, and then Donald Trump won in 2016. Now, how did you react when Donald Trump won?
Disbelief.
So disbelief, help us, can't believe this is happening. But I know for a fact that you all had family members and friends and neighbors that celebrated the result. I know this in part because Donald Trump won Iowa by 8 points. And Iowa is a traditionally purple state. So how the heck did Donald Trump win Iowa by 8 points? How did he win in 2016? If you turn on cable news, why would you think he's our president today?
Hillary.
Oh. I'm going to say the list would go something like Hillary Clinton, Russia, racism, the FBI, Facebook, some list like that. But to me, having spent 7 years working in these communities, I said, you know why Donald Trump won? It's because we blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I've been to those towns. They never recovered. And what we did to those jobs, we're now doing to retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, truck driving jobs, and on through the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing where you live here in Iowa and Waterloo? Why are those stores closing? Amazon. Amazon's sucking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? 0. That is your math. Iowa, $20 billion out, 0 back. 30% of your stores and malls closed forever. Most common job in your state is retail clerk. Average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. How many of you have seen a self-serve kiosk in a McDonald's?
Yeah.
Every location in the country in the next 2 years. And they're going to start doing the robot burger flippers in the back of the house. I know, you're thinking. I've actually had robot produced food. It's quite tasty. It's very, very standardized, honestly. They figure out the recipe and then they just do it over and over again. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get the software, I'm sure you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human until you get someone on the line, right? How many of you all do that? Yeah, we hate the software. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hey, Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, delightful. You may not even know it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work in call centers right now making $14 an hour? And we're here to talk in large part about the issues of racial inequality in this country. When I spoke to an African American group, I said that studies show that African American net worth in the average household, median net worth in the United States, will go to zero by 2053. And they gasped. They said, how is it possible that African American median net worth will go to zero? And it's because we're in the midst of this fundamental economic transformation. You can think of it as an economic tidal wave. And who suffers the most when you have a tidal wave or disaster? The poor. Poor people who can't protect themselves as much. And of course, in this country, that overlaps with communities of color. That's how studies say that the median African American net worth will be zero by 2053. Because the tidal wave is coming. It started on your farms and moved to your factories. Now it's on your main streets. And you all have to stop it before it gets to your highways. Now, what do I mean by that? My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. How many of you all know a truck driver? How will that truck driver react when there's a robot truck on the highway that never needs to stop? Very, very negatively, I would suggest, because there are 3.5 million truckers in this country, and they have to stop driving after 14 hours behind the wheel. The truck actually will stop them and say, get out and go to sleep. The robot truck never needs to stop, 24/7. How many of you have been to Iowa 80, the truck stop in Davenport? Yeah, it's got a mean buffet, right? That's why you go. It is. It's a really good value. You go and you're like, wow, such variety. Reasonable price. Very fresh. It turns over every day because they say that 5,000 people stop there every day. What happens when that 5,000 starts to drop because the truckers because the truckers are robots, and obviously robots don't need to stop at Iowa 80. This is what I mean when I'm saying it's coming to your highways. This is the fourth industrial revolution, and this is why Donald Trump is our president. We're in the third inning. Imagine when it gets to innings 4, 5, and 6. So this is what hit me in 2016 he wins, and then being sort of a wonky numbers guy, I say, okay, stop the press, Donald Trump's our president. Tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star. It's no longer business as usual. We should try and dig deep. I started digging through the numbers, said, oh my gosh, we blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were in the swing states, and that directly drove his victory according to the numbers. We're gonna do the same thing to the other most common jobs in this country. And my first move was still not to run for president of the United States because I'm not a crazy person. I went to our leaders in Washington, D.C., and I said to them, how are we gonna help our people manage this transition, this fourth industrial revolution? And what do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I asked, what are we gonna do? It's a fun exercise, right? What would a D.C.
Can't talk about that.
policymaker? Yeah, number one was we cannot talk about that, Andrew. Number two was we should study that further. Number three was we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. And I said that last one sounds pretty responsible, but I looked at the studies. You all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest?
Less than 30%.
0 to 15%.
I anchored us low, so he said less than 30. Yeah, that's right, 0 to 15%. They're a total dud. And when I said that to the policymakers in DC, you know what he said next? I guess we'll get better at it. That's what passes for policy out of DC. And the fact is, they succeed whether we succeed or fail. Did you all know that DC is now the richest metro area in this country? What do they produce?
Nothing. Hot air.
Well, think about it, like how messed up is that? How could they be the richest town in this country? What do they produce? I'll tell you what they produce. Bad decisions, lack of accountability, and corruption. I mean, that's the tough truth. This is really what fueled Donald Trump's rise. And someone in DC said something to me that brought me here to you all tonight. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC is going to do anything about this. Because fundamentally, this is not a town of leaders, this is a town of followers. And the only way we will do anything about it is if you create a wave in other parts of the country and bring it crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years with the wave. That was 2 years ago, Iowa, and I stand before you today, number 5 in the polls to become president of the United States.
Yeah!
tip of that wave, how many Californians is each Iowan worth in terms of political power? 1,000 each. That's right. How many people are here tonight? Look around you. I'm going to say 120. If I was Trumpian, I'd be like 400. It was the biggest crowd anyone's ever seen. So let's say there are 120 of us here tonight. That's still the equivalent of 3 football stadiums of Californians. That's the power you all have. I'm probably not the first presidential candidate that you've seen. Hold up fingers and say like how many presidential candidates you've seen in this cycle. So this would be 5, that'd be 10. Good flash it. He's at 17, 5, 1. This man likes me. I like him then. 7, 1, 20. Wow. He really got up there. 2. Now, why are all these presidential candidates coming and asking you for their support? It's because they also have done the math, and they know that you are 1,000 times more powerful than the average Californian in terms of voting power. You actually can control the future of this country and turn it on a dime. That's why I love campaigning here. You all have the future of the country in your hands because this is one of the only places where democracy actually still functions. Most of the rest of the country looks up and they see the government pipes clogged with millions of dollars of lobbyist cash, and they despair. They say, my vote can do nothing about the pipes. Americans are smart, they're right. Their votes pretty much can do nothing. But yours can. That is the magic of Iowa. If enough of you get together and say we're gonna flush the pipes and we're gonna rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, then it happens. That's why it's so wonderful to be here. We said before that Amazon, this $1 trillion tech company, is paying 0 in taxes. I'm going to suggest that most of you think that's a terrible idea that they pay 0 taxes. And you, because you're among the most powerful people in the country, actually can change it. You must change it. It is up to you to save the rest of the country from the progressive depletion of your communities by the mega corporations that are sucking us all dry. It's true. And when you first heard about me in the campaign from a friend or on a podcast, you probably heard about me as the guy who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And the first time you heard that, I've been called the Asian Oprah, which I really appreciate. That's a really great compliment. Yeah, you get 1,000. You get 1,000. We actually have been giving $1,000 a month to about 14 families around the country, including 2 here in Iowa. And so when you see that in real life, you're like, wow, they like it. It makes them stronger, healthier, less stressed out. And then you realize, of course they like it. Of course it helps. I had the privilege of sitting down with Martin Luther King III in Atlanta after the last debate. And he said to me that this is what his father was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. This is not Andrew Yang's idea. This is Thomas Paine's idea from the founding of the country, said everyone should get a citizen's dividend. This is Martin Luther King's idea, saying we need a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And though he obviously was fighting for African Americans, he said this applies to all Americans. He wasn't saying that this guaranteed minimum income was for any one group or another. He said we need to do it for everyone. One state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
Alaska. And how does Alaska pay for it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Data.
Data, technology, software.
Marijuana.
Marijuana's not wrong. I want to legalize marijuana 100% and say it should be legal throughout the country.
Yeah.
So this dividend that Alaska's had in effect for almost 40 years, you move there, you get the dividend the next year. It's not that hard. It's per individual. So if you had a family of 4, you'd get $8,000 the following year. And Alaskans love it. It's decreased income inequality, it's improved children's health, it's created hundreds of jobs, and it was passed by a Republican governor. His argument was this: who would you rather get the oil money, the government who's just going to mess it up somehow, or you? And the Alaskan people said, us please, and he said, I thought you'd say that, and then they passed it, and now everyone's been loving it. We're in the same boat with technology money today. A study came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study somewhere out there? How many have access to a Netflix password? Anyway, there's a documentary on there called The Great Hack, and it includes that study. Did we all get data checks in the mail last month? No. This is similar to the questions like, who voted for the $4 trillion bailout? It's like, none of us. Like, who got their data checked? None of us. Who did get the data checked?
Amazon.
Facebook, Amazon, Google, all the mega tech companies that are profiting off of our data to the tune of billions and tens of billions of dollars. Do you see the game, Iowa? You see how it works? And the conversations that we're having tonight in this room, you probably never heard before out of any politician because they've been bought and paid for, honestly. Like, you know who has the most power by the conversations that are not had. It's true. Yeah. Like that's real power. Just keep anyone from talking about it. I stand before you. We raised $10 million last quarter in increments of only $30 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there are a lot of them. And this is all grassroots funded, people powered. We've got a bus out front with the names of supporters on it. Zero corporate PAC money. This is people rising up, trying to solve our own problems and rewrite the rules. After I'm president and you get this $1,000 a month, how would you spend it in real life? Bills. Yeah.
Pay off bills.
Insurance premiums.
Insurance premiums, unfortunately.
Pay your own business.
College debt.
Start your own business, college debt. How much of it would stay right here in Iowa, the $1,000 a month?
Majority.
A lot of it. Not all of it. A little bit of it would float up to the cloud. You might get your own Netflix password instead of borrowing. But most of it would stay right here in your community. It would go to local businesses, to daycare, to car repairs you've been putting off, to Little League signups, to religious organizations, to civic groups. This is the trickle-up economy. From our people, our families, and our communities up. This would make us stronger, healthier, less stressed out, improve our relationships, give us a chance to spend more time with our kids, and give us a chance to actually fix some of the problems that we're leaving for our kids. How many of y'all are parents like me and Evelyn? If you're a parent, then you had this thought at some point. Our kids are not all right because we're leaving them a future that is much darker than the lives we led as their parents. And it's hard to talk about because you're a parent, you want what's best for your kid. It might be hard for you to say that to your child. If you're a young person in this country, you have this sinking feeling that you are being left a total mess. You are. We are leaving you a total mess, and we owe you better. The challenge is, how can we actually solve these problems and be able to look our kids in the eyes and say, we cleaned it up, that we actually are proud of the country we're leaving for you, that your prospects will be as good or better than ours. If you were born in the 1940s in the United States of America, there's a 93% chance that you did better than your parents. That's the American dream. I mean, a 93, that's really high. If you're born in the 1990s, you're down to a 50-50 shot. And guess which way it's going? Below 50. That's why, as parents, we feel bad for our kids. And that's why if you're a young person, you have that sinking feeling. It's not our imagination. It's correct, it's real. We're being sold a bill of goods by the corporations and government that keep telling us everything's great. And then you think, if things are not great for me and my family and my community, I must be making a mistake somehow. Because stock market prices are at record highs, GDP is at record highs, headline unemployment is supposed to be great. You know what else are at record highs in the United States of America right now? Suicide. Stress, anxiety, mental illness, student loan debt, depression, suicides, and drug overdoses. It has gotten so bad that America's life expectancy has declined for 3 years in a row. Do you know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row?
Spanish flu.
The Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. That's how far back you have to go. It is unusual for life expectancy to decline once in a developed country. It ordinarily just goes up. But then in our case, it went down, and then down, and then down again. Anyone want to bet what it's going to do in year 4? Again, this is why there's such a divide between the messages we're getting and our lived experience day to day. When Donald Trump was running for president, he said the headline unemployment rate was fake news. Y'all remember that? And then he became president, all of a sudden it's real. He was right the first time. It was fake news. It's still fake today. The headline unemployment rate ignores you if you drop out of the workforce. It ignores the fact that people are working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. It ignores the fact that the majority of new jobs are temp gig or contract jobs that don't have benefits. It ignores the fact that if you're fortunate enough to graduate from college, you have record levels of student loan debt, and there's a 44% chance that you're doing a job that doesn't require a college degree anyway. None of that shows up in the headline unemployment rate. As your president, it will be my joy to actually unify how we are doing and the measurements for our country. So what do I mean by that? You have these garbage GDP, stock market price, and headline unemployment rate measurements. What would be a measurement that would actually tell you how you and your community are doing in real life? It's interesting, right? I'm going to let you play president for a minute. Because, in point of fact, you all are going to play president, truthfully. That's, again, the wonder of Iowa. You all get to choose.
Passwords. Number of Netflix passwords.
Number of Netflix passwords. You only need one, that's right. Just
Everyone gets their
Average yearly income.
Yeah, income and affordability.
Yeah.
If I said that went up in Waterloo, you'd be great. How about mental health and freedom from substance abuse?
Yeah.
How about clean air and clean water?
Yeah.
How about childhood success rates? How about wellness and life expectancy? Or a proportion of elderly who can retire in quality circumstances? These are the real measurements for how we're doing, and as your president, I will actually take our GDP measurement and say, look, 100 years old, really out of date, kind of useless, leading us off a cliff, and modernize it to include life expectancy, affordability, mental health, and freedom from substance abuse. And I'll report to you how we're doing by the real numbers every year at the State of the Union. This is the new vision, a new way forward that we need to make happen as quickly as possible. But it will not happen unless you all make it happen. Donald Trump became our president in 2016 in large part because he got some of the problems right. He was right about a lot of the suffering that is in our communities. He said he was going to make America great again, and then what did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. You remember that? It has been a long 3 years, Iowa. She was wrong to say America's already great. She should have acknowledged the depth and severity and reality of the problems that we're experiencing as Americans. Donald Trump's solutions were he was going to build a wall, he was going to turn the clock back, he was going to bring the old jobs back. These were not the right solutions. You all know that we have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible. And we have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. And I'm the ideal candidate for that job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Math is an acronym. What does it stand for, Iowa?
Make America think harder.
Make America think harder. That's right. That is your job. That is how you're going to lead us in a new way forward. Lead the rest of the country. Let them all know it's not left, it's not right. It's forward. And that is where you're going to lead us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yes, I'm going to moderate a few questions, but I have the first one, since I have the microphone. And my question to you is, on your first day or your first few months, what are your strategies for decreasing the disparities in education, employment, and criminal justice? And how soon will you start that?
Thank you. I would start on day one. And here is the vision that you all will make come to pass. Andrew Yang becomes president and it gets inaugurated in January 2021. Why will I have won? On the promise of a dividend for all Americans so we can all participate in economic progress. And $1,000 a month means much more to people
who have less initially. This is what happened in Alaska, where it decreased income inequality, because if you put $12,000 a year into someone's hands and they're currently making $12,000 a year, that's a 100% increase. And so you decrease income inequality and wealth disparities immediately by the numbers. And I want you all to imagine what the picture will look like. The Democrats will be so thrilled to have beaten Donald Trump. They'll still be jumping up and down. They'll be like, we did it. We took a chance on the new guy, and it worked. And they'll be thrilled to put economic resources into the hands of children and families to make us stronger and start making progress on these inequalities. But then the Republicans will look at it and say, wait a minute, how do I feel about the dividend? And you'll see that this is a bipartisan idea. Conservatives don't hate economic resources in citizens' hands. They hate a giant bureaucracy making everyone's decisions. This is one reason why Alaska, a deep red state, passed the dividend. So after we get the dividend passed, starting on day one, we'll put money into your hands, and this will help ease the inequalities as quickly as possible. I also want to make a comment on education. How many, raise your hand again if you're a parent, and then raise your hand too if you're an educator. We need to do much more for our schools and our teachers. We need to pay teachers more. We need to lighten up on the SAT and these other standardized tests that are terrible measurements of human worth. But if you're a parent or an educator, you know that 2/3 of our kids' educational outcomes are determined outside of the school. That's parental time spent with the child, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the household, income. And so we put our teachers in impossible positions where we say, educate our child, but you can only control about 1/3 of the outcome. And the teachers know this. And so if we put money directly into the families and homes, we will give our kids a better chance to learn and our teachers a much better chance to teach.
Thank you.
Is it easier if I
Let's
come to you?
come up, yes.
Sure.
And then I think, sir, you had one question. Well, you should go man one as well. So.
You want to go first? Okay, Mr. Heng, good seeing you again. We talked earlier about how Donald Trump got elected. One of the elephants in the room is the religious right. The religious right fueled that rise to power, and then in return, Donald Trump opened the door to the White House and is basically giving them a free pass to do whatever they want. Earlier today, you talked about your secular upbringing. Doesn't mean you're anti-religious. It just means that you grew up in a household that wasn't religious. How do you reconcile that if you're president with a religious right that's been empowered, emboldened, and basically has never had checks and balances? What would you do as president to stop their attack on reproductive rights, LGBT rights, trans even existing? How would you take that on?
Thanks for the question. It was Justin.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I was lucky enough to get Evelyn to go out with me in the first place, and then eventually marry me. And Evelyn's devout Christian, and so we're raising our boys in the church. And I've now seen the impact that that's had on my family, and it gives us a lot of joy and strength every day. When I talk to evangelical Christians about their experience, many of them have real reservations about Donald Trump, where they feel like they made a deal with a president that may or may not embody their values. And many Christians I speak to feel like religion has been politicized in very unfortunate ways. That is what we have to appeal to. I heard earlier today someone say that that they thought that Jesus would have loved universal basic income because it was all about helping the least among us. That could be a message that would actually be very, very powerful and resonant with certain religious communities. To me, it's a false choice to say it's like an either or, where you have this group of evangelical Christians that have a particular agenda. I am for women's reproductive rights, as an example, but people have come to me and said everyone having economic resources in their hands is the most pro-life policy anyone is talking about, because how many children are not being brought into the world because the families don't think that they can provide for them. So one of the reasons why we are so polarized right now is that people fall into this false choice where it's like an either or. We have to try and bring people together and let them know that the problems we're trying to solve apply to all of our communities and all of our families.
Yes. We're okay.
How are we gonna beat the lobbyists?
Many of you people come through here. You know, and you follow the money is the lobbyists. The lobbyists have the power. How do you deal with that?
Agreed. I love this question so much. Hit on me. You know how much money we've gotten from corporate lobbyists here in this campaign? 0%. And I joke all the time that corporations would never have sent the anonymous Asian guy to do their bidding because it would have been a really dumb plan. Be like, hey, let's send the person no one's ever heard of. Send them all in. I'm a parent, I'm a citizen, I'm a patriot. I have no agenda but to do what's right for the American people. So the question is, how do you break? Oh, you're going to give me the power. That's why that's Iowa. But here's how we break the stranglehold. And this is something that everyone will get behind. Right now, the lobbyists control our government. You look up, they bought and sold the legislators. They can offer fancy jobs when you leave Congress. They're there dangling the money. And if you're a politician, you look up and you have the people on one side, and then you have the money on the other. So how do you change it? What you do is you bring the money and the people together. Right now, what percentage of Americans donate to political campaigns?
12%.
Less than 5%. No one donates to political campaigns. It's one reason why the legislators all just gravitate towards the money. So here's how we change it. As president, I will champion a democracy dollars bill that puts $100 in the hands of every voter that you can only give to candidates or campaigns. Use it or lose it. You don't use it, it disappears. You do use it, then it goes to that candidate or campaign.
Executive order?
Sorry?
Executive order?
You can do this from the executive branch. You prefer to have congressional buy-in because you end up with vouchers and the rest of it. So what percentage of Americans would give to political candidates and campaigns if it was essentially free, you had $100 that the government gave you to give? The 5% would shoot up to what? 50, 60, 65%? Not 100% because people are still lazy, you know? But you get it up to 50, 60%, and if you get up to 50, 60%, sir, you wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 4 to 1. And then if I'm a legislator and I have a choice, the 10,000 Iowans on this side, they all give me their 100 democracy dollars, that's $1 million. And then the lobbyist comes and says, I'm gonna wave 100,000 at you. You'd be like, I don't wanna go against the people because the money and the people are then united. And we don't need to worry about trying to get all the corporate money out, though I wanna get all the corporate money out. But this allows us to wash it out and structurally change the incentives. The sell to politicians will be, don't you hate calling rich people and asking them for money? Isn't it soul sucking? Wouldn't you rather hang out with your family? I don't know if that's gonna work.
Only if they have souls to know if it's being sucked out.
But if it doesn't work, what I'm championing is 12-year term limits to get them out of Washington, D.C. Because the job is to go to D.C., solve the problems, and get out. And if you want to hang out in D.C. and like a spider and try and hoard resources, then that's wrong. That's not what you're there to do. The democracy dollars is bipartisan because, again, this is something that all of us can get behind. It's very difficult to say, look, we'd much rather keep this out of the hands of the people. It's a very, very effective way to actually reclaim our government. It's going to take a lot of work, sir. I'm not going to dissemble, but as your president, I believe I can get this done.
You think those guys are going to vote themselves out?
Well, here's the wonder of it, too. So I'm for a lot of things that would be structurally helpful. I'm for restoring earmarks to Congress because you can't actually make deals unless you can actually trade favors. And right now, they can't pass laws because no one can trade a favor. So if you were to go to Congress and say, hey guys, let's pass this democracy dollars bill, and then they'll be like, oh wait, this might be bad for me. Then say, how about we have it kick in at a particular point when you guys are all about on the exit door, and then they'll be like, oh, this won't hurt me. I mean, we can make it happen as long as we align their self-interest with the people. It's funny, you're laughing, but this is what it would take.
Thank you. Let's get right here. I'm gonna get the young lady and then I'll come back to you.
Sorry.
Just wanted to ask what sustainable agriculture means to you, because I had looked at your page and went on to the sustainability because as a mother it's become increasingly important to me. You mentioned clean air and water, and I just came from Texas, and we have some of the worst water quality. It's pretty terrible because of oil, but also agricultural runoff from all the pesticides and fungicides that we put into our soil, and then it goes into our water. And I just wanted to ask what sustainable agriculture means to you.
Sustainable agriculture means the world to me, in part because we've got two little guys that are a little bit older than yours. It's a guy, right? Little guy? Yeah. And what's happening with our water and air is tied to what's going wrong with our environment writ large. If you pollute, if you're, let's say, an oil company in Texas and you say, hey, I'm going to make the water less clean, how much of a price do you pay right now if you're that company? Nothing. There's not a price on that. So what we have to do is we have to put a price on pollution. We have to put a price on anything that makes our environment less healthy for your kids and mine. These companies only respond to one language, and that's dollars and cents. Is the bottom line. We can stand out there every day and say, do the right thing. We know it wouldn't matter. That's the oil companies, the drug companies, the giant agribusiness businesses. They don't care about us. All they care about is their revenue and profits. So what you do is you say, look, if you do the wrong thing here in terms of emissions or pollution, then we're actually going to build it into your cost of doing business. And that's the only way that we can actually make it so that your kids and mine can grow up in a country where we can still feel like the water and air are clean. And sustainable agriculture is such a key part of the puzzle, because it's the part of the puzzle, because we have to be able to feed ourselves in a way that doesn't despoil the planet.
May I add to that? So you're talking about disincentives for pollution in waterways. What about incentives like expanding on CRP and other practices that encourage landowners to put native vegetation on their land to provide ecosystem services for pollinators for fruits and vegetables that we eat every day?
You are 100% right. I talked about one side of the equation, the other side is equally important, which is positive incentives towards more sustainable practices. Thank you.
One more question.
Only one? That's terrible. Nikki, pick the best questioner.
No pressure.
No pressure. I don't know how you do that.
No pressure. So I'm going to come to the back of the room. How about that? And I'm just going to put the mic back here.
Thank you for coming to Waterloo. My question is about the other sources of income for most of our Americans, and that is minimum wage and Social Security. Now, these things don't get adjusted with inflation or the cost of living. And my question for you is to would you make sure that minimum wage and Social Security go up in a way that truly reflect the increases in expenditures and not this kind of outdated CPI model?
Thank you for the question. I've got parents who are in their 70s, and I remember as they got closer to the end of their working lives, they became very, very cost conscious. And I was trying to figure out why it was, and I realized that they knew exactly how much money they were going to get on fixed income. They knew their working lives were ending, and so it wasn't going to grow. There was no like, oh, I'm going to get a raise next year, and I'm going to go out and do these things. It became like, here's the income level, and it was stable and predictable, and then the costs continue to creep up. And the three costs that are killing us are healthcare, housing, and education/childcare. Like, those are the three killers. So I understood then, it's like, wow, living on a fixed income that doesn't adjust for your cost of living is a great way to turn people into very, very stressed out people. You know? And like, as a young person, at first I was like, why are you so stressed? Why are you so stressed? And then like, it finally took me a little bit, I was like, oh, I get why. I understand. So we should 100% be increasing Social Security benefits with the true cost of living. This $1,000 a month dividend would stack on top of Social Security, so it would be the biggest effective increase in Social Security in our nation's history. And where the minimum wage is concerned, Americans should not be working full-time and be poor. So we have to keep that from being the case, whether that's increasing the minimum wage, or my preferred way, as you can tell, is just putting money directly into your hands. Because if we put money directly into your hands, it's an effective raise, not just for people who are out there working day to day, but also for people like my wife, who's at home with our two boys. or all the nurturers and caregivers and the volunteers and the people that are doing things that make our community stronger, that right now the market doesn't even value at anything. You know, it's like, if you were to say, hey, give the stay-at-home mom a raise, that's what we can do. And right now, I would argue that what Evelyn's doing is as important or more important than a hedge fund manager or a software engineer or whatnot, and her work is not being valued appropriately. So we have to make sure that people aren't working full-time and struggling, whether that's inside the home or in a place of business. We can take a page from the Germans. Thank you, Iowa. We're going to make history together in 2020. It's up to you. And I know you are going to support the country in the right direction. Thank you all so much.
Hey folks, Andrew's just going to do a quick one-on-one with the local paper, and then he'll come back out for selfies, but we'll have to make it quick because we do have an event immediately after this. So if you want a photo or an autograph from Andrew, line up against this dividing wall, and starting here at this tree, I will take your phone and get a selfie with Andrew. Thanks.
Concerning me. What's that called? Where it's like, what's that word called? It's like a couple of
Looking for Fred, looking for Fred. Freddy Bear.
I'm not sure that way. She's still yank curious.
Guys, my phone, the internet was down the entire time. Kind of stunk. I couldn't like go into chat. Oh, now it loads. Where did Fred go?
I know.
Oh, Fred.
You work at work?
Excuse me.
Okay, all right.
Yo.
Okay, let me give you all this stuff.
Folks, when you get to the front of the line, if you could have your phones out and ready to take a photo, I will take your phone from you, but we will have to move quickly. Thank you.
I'd love to get you guys information on that. Right? Oh, it's some dumb things and I'm like procrastinating. I actually need it for work. Minneapolis. So are you from
Oh, I see Fred.
so early on that Andrew that your DMs, Twitter, stuff that far right there after that.
Enjoy.
I like to sense that. You said the person in Minneapolis in 4 hours. But Andrew actually knew Andrew's in 4 hours. Exactly. So we did so much. I don't think people mind that. Actually, I have to take a photo because I don't talk to him, but I give Andrew a lot of extra points for actually knowing where to who's talking. What's important is obviously.
God.
I'm sure it's hard with all these events.
This thing stay on.
It's important. Yeah, so much. So when I saw Andrew last, I'm exhausted. All I do is stand in the back and